hey to one another.
That last note that I hit, it was bad. Very, very bad.
Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts and thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts and thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts and thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts and thousands elsewhere.
beginning to the end. All my life is in your hands. This whole world may hold me down, but it can never drown you out. I'm not merely flesh and bone. I was made for something more. You are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. Through the dark, I hear your voice. Rising up, I will rejoice. For I was lost, but now I'm found. 'Cause even death can't hold you down. You are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. Christ who lives within me. From beginning to the end, you deserve the glory. You deserve the glory. It's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives within me. Christ who lives within me. From beginning to the end, you deserve the glory. You deserve the glory. You are God, you're the great I am. Breath of life, I breathe you in. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you. You are strong in my brokenness, sovereign over every step. Even in the fire, I'm alive in you.
I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. stain. He washed it white as snow. He washed away and bore my sin and all my shame. And when before the throne I stand in Him complete, Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat, Jesus paid it all to Him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as sin. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow.
Alone in my sorrow, dead in my sin, lost without hope, with no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. That's when death was arrested and my life began. Ash was redeemed, only beauty remains. My orphan heart was given away. My mourning grew quiet, my feet rose to dance. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Released from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was a ransom faithful. He canceled my debt and he called me his friend. That's when death was arrested and my life began. washes over me. You have made me new. Now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new. Now life begins with you. With you. Our Savior displayed on a criminal's cross. Darkness rejoices though heaven had lost. But then Jesus arose with all freedom in mind. That's when death was arrested and my life began. That's when death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new. Now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new. Now life begins with you. With you. Oh, we're free, free, forever and free. Come join the song of all liberty. Yes, we're free, free, forever amen. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, we're free, free, forever and free. Come join the song of all liberty. Yes, we're free, free, forever amen. When death was arrested and my life began. When death was arrested and my life began. That's when death was arrested and my life began. Lord God, I ask you, Lord, that you just keep it in our hearts, God, that you don't let us forget what it was like, Lord, when we first called out to you, when we first found faith in you, Lord. I pray that that just stays real in us, and that and just in every season of our lives, Lord, from the winters and the summers, Lord, I pray, God, that you just remain first in our hearts always, and that just passion and that fire for you, Lord, it just is ignited for you over and over again. And I just pray, Lord, just for Pastor Bobby's message, I pray that it is just your voice and your words only. And I pray these things in your precious name. And all God's people said, amen.
Good morning and welcome to Calvary Chapel of the Hudson Valley. If you are visiting us today, we would love to have the opportunity to contact you. All you need to do is fill out the visitor card that's in the back of the seat in front of you and drop it off in one of our donation boxes located on the walls of the sanctuary. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phone at this time. In case you missed signing up last week, we are going to be having another short informational meeting after the service today in the Children's Worship Room for anyone who would like to be involved in the Christmas Eve service. We are also looking for anyone who's interested in decorating the church for the holiday season. This meeting is open to anyone of any age. The junior high youth group will be taking a trip to the Wrights family farm for a flashlight corn maze trip this Friday night. They will be leaving the church at 5:30 p.m. and returning back to the church at 10. The cost is only $1. Please see Lynanne Gibson if you are interested in this trip. Oh, and don't forget to bring a flashlight. Our next prayer and praise night will be next Sunday at 5 p.m. Please see the table in the back. Grab one of the prayer request or praise cards and fill them out. Oasis, older adults sharing in spirit, will have their next meeting Saturday, October 27th at noon in the Solid Ground Cafe. Sign up in the back if you plan to attend. All men are invited to the monthly men's breakfast on Saturday, October 27th at 8 a.m. Please sign up in the back so we know how much food to get. There will be a high school youth retreat on November 9th through the 11th at Bowdoin Park. All high schoolers grades 9 through 12 are invited to join us for a weekend of fun and Bible study. Registration is $65. You can register online at ccohb.org.
All right, that's it on the announcements. Good morning. Was your windshield all icy this morning? I love it. I love this weather. I wish it was a little less colder, but I love it. I just love this time of year, and I'm sure many of you guys do too. Just to point out to you, this Saturday is the memorial service for Bill Meyer. Bill Meyer was a brother here in this church, and just those of you who knew him, he was a Stephen minister, just a great man of God. Well, we're having a send-off party this coming Saturday at 1 o'clock, so just get the word out about that. And also, there's a family in our church that needs your help. They're struggling with some health issues due to mold exposure, and they're getting hyperbaric oxygen treatments in New Hampshire and need a more permanent way to stay up there. They are looking to rent a newer, hard camper from anyone that may have one. This will allow them to affordably get the treatment they need. So if you can help them with that and keep them in your prayers, you could see Pastor Nick, and he'll tell you more about it and how you can help the family. But this morning, we are in John's Gospel, John chapter 15. Let's turn there in our Bibles. I want to get into this morning. As usual, our faithful ushers, they're coming around with Bibles. If you do not have a Bible, can you please just let them know? Just raise your hand and they will throw a Bible. No, they'll get a Bible to you. In fact, I saw that happen Wednesday night. Somebody just raised their hand, and this lady was incredible. She just took it like a receiver. So it was good to see. But this is such an important text. If you took one of those Bibles, just turn to page 1242, so you'll be right with us. But this is such an important text that we're going to look at this morning. I think for Christians, if you're just joining us here for the first time, we're talking, these are the last words of Christ to his disciples before he resurrects and comes back again. But these are these things that he's going to be sharing. And I believe right here, how we respond to this command by Jesus is pivotal. Listen to me. To our inheritance in Christ Jesus. And I hope that gets your attention because it's important. How we respond to these verses will affect us in this life and in the life to come. In fact, I wanted to begin our study this morning in verse 6. If you were with us last week, I titled this message, Abiding, because it's about abiding. It's about fruit. And Jesus is, again, imperative as he's sharing this incredible text here. And we kind of just read through it. So I even recognized last week, and I said, listen, I got to go back to this text because I really believe it's so important that we get it. And I think an eye-opener is verse 6. Jesus says to his disciples there, if anyone does not abide in me, he or she is cast out as a branch and is withered, dried. And they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. Now, that's not a good picture here, burning, especially when Jesus says it. And it's interesting, I was looking, at that week of, as Jesus is sharing these things, he said this about burning quite a lot. Now, if you're just coming into our study, this morning, you really need to listen to part 1 so you can really get a good understanding of part 2. But in the very first verse, if you go back there, Jesus said there, this was powerful. as he's sharing with his guys. Remember, this is it. He knows these are the last things. He knows exactly what they're thinking. They're afraid. Jesus is saying, you're going to betray me. You're going to deny me. You're going to all forsake me. And I'm leaving you. And they're hearing this. And so Jesus knows they're upset. And so he says this to them. In fact, if you're here today and you're troubled by many things here this morning, there's a lot of stuff going on in your family. Just that family alone that we were talking about. I was hearing about their plight just yesterday. And it just seems like you don't think things can get any worse, and it just seems like it just continues. And you're like, Jesus, where are you in this? And Jesus rest assures his disciples, and he says to them, listen up, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. He was proclaiming to them and to us here this morning, I'm the only true source to God. I'm the mediator. There's no other way. These terms, vines, branches, fruits, spoke to these guys that were hearing it. They understood what Jesus was saying. And we need to understand, he was speaking at that time of Israel. Israel, they were thought of as the vine. They were thought of as the fruit that people were supposed to come and find God and experience God. In fact, I shared to you, as Jesus, the master teacher, is sharing these things, he's walking with his disciples. He's going towards the brook Kidron. And as he's sharing there on that eastern gate was this emblem, this huge emblem, the size of people, of clusters of grape, of vines. And that spoke of the nation. It was like our stars and stripes, our bald eagle. And Jesus is looking at that. And he's saying, listen, guys, you need to take it back to me. I am the true vine. Israel is not the true vine. If you want to find God, if you want to know God, you have to come to me. Just the chapter to the left there, chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus said another profound thing that should really perk us up. He said, listen, guys, I'm the way, I'm the truth, and I'm the life. And then he adds there, no one comes to the Father except through me. Prior to this, I'm the true light. Yeah, there's been a lot of lights that come out there. Liz and I were watching some show on Netflix, and we're watching this thing, and it's all about lights and premonitions, and this is the light to follow, and this is Eastern this and that. So many other avenues, but Jesus broke it down for you and I. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true light. I am the true bread. If you really want to know God, if you really want to get connected to God, you have to come to me. This was huge as he's sharing these things. And then in verse 2, he says, every branch in me. That's us right there. Every branch, you and I. You know, we can really think high of ourselves. I'm a branch. You're a twig. Worse than that, you read Ezekiel 15:5, and it tells you we only serve one purpose. We only got one good purpose. And that is to stay in the vine and to be usable and get everything from the vine, Jesus Christ. So every branch in me, that's a key right there, in me, that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And just to throw out real fast, the better translation, the better rendering there, because there's 4 words for this word, takes away, it's ero. I don't want to go through it. You got to listen to the tape. But basically, it's lift up. And I like that. Every branch in me, you're connected to me. You know, you see those vines sometimes, they just grow and they have a way of just falling on the ground, and critters, I like that word, critters can get on them and all kinds of things, but he lifts up. In fact, the picture is even better. He lifts up and puts on a rock. And there the gardener comes along and he washes it and he cleanses it and he cares over it. So he's giving us this picture here. He takes care of the vine, the gardener, the master gardener. Whatever storm you're in today, he's the gardener. He's the one that's there. He takes away and he also prunes, it tells us there in verse 2. Why does he prune me? Why does he go? Because he's the master. He knows exactly what he's doing. And ever so lovingly, ever so caringly, he trims, he takes care of. Why? So it can bear more fruit. And none of us like pruning. I don't like pruning. But you know what I've learned through the pruning? And many of those, I'm looking at faces here, you've been through some storms. There's something about when the pruning begins in our lives, what happens is it draws us closer to the vine. We see Jesus like we've never seen him before. We see him like those 3 Jewish guys, that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, when they were in that fiery furnace. But it says there was a 4th there with him, with them, and he showed himself strong. So Jesus is sharing these things to his guys. I'm in control. I'm working everything out for your good. Then in verse 3, Jesus says to us there, you are already clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. That is such an important text there. You need to highlight it. It's speaking of you and I today. You and I who find ourselves in Christ Jesus. That phrase is so important. When we went through Ephesians, 26 times, Paul uses that phrase. He communicates to us, that's who we are now. We're not separated from God anymore. We are so bound together in him. He is with us. He is in us. And he will come upon us. So we're already clean here. In fact, he said this to his disciples back in chapter 13, verse 10. He says, you guys are clean, all but one of you. And the one he was speaking of there was the one Judas, the one who was going to betray him. And this is where I'm going, where this part 2 has brought me here this morning, is that, you know, there are some that think they're connected to the vine, but they're not connected to the vine. Judas is a great study for us, especially if you remember back in chapter 13, we talked about him. Here's a guy that was with Jesus for 3.5 years. I used to get very discouraged when I would hear about people, they're coming to the church, they're growing, they're planting, and then all of a sudden they begin to drift and they begin to fall away and they begin to wander from the faith. And you see all kinds of stuff happening in our life and you're like, what's wrong with, why don't they come back to Jesus, go to Jesus? And you look at such stuff that happens in people's life, but then you realize, you know, maybe they just never really got connected. That was Judas. He never was connected to Jesus. He was actually a fake. He was a phony. He was a pretender. He never possessed Jesus. That's the thing. He professed that he was with Jesus. But it's interesting. When his faith was tested, he actually proved that he wasn't in the faith because he went away. In fact, John writes about this later on. You can read it yourself in 1 John chapter 2, verse 19. He says, you know, though they were with us in the beginning, they didn't stay with us. And that only proved that they were never really connected. And that's such an important lesson for us to learn here. Are we connected? In fact, we had communion service last week, and it was so rich. It was so, for me, and I know many of you, I talk to you later, where you begin to examine yourself. Lord, am I really in the faith? Paul tells us that, to do that, 2 Corinthians 13. So are we connected? This is so important. In fact, in Matthew 7:20, if you could put it up there, Jesus told his disciples there, therefore by their fruits you will know them. You're going to know them. And he went on in that text in verses 13 to 20. Talking about a good tree. He's saying, listen, you know a tree by the fruit it bears. Good fruit or bad fruit. You know, if you're talking about apples and oranges, you know an apple tree because it's apples. It doesn't have apples and oranges. And so Jesus was telling them there. In fact, he goes on to say in verse 21, right after this, where he says, you'll know them by their fruits. He says, not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of my Father in heaven will enter. On Judgment Day, many. And if you go back to Matthew 7, where Jesus said some of the most profound things to his disciples. This was after his great message there, where he's telling them, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who come to this place of recognizing, I can't save myself. I need God. And he talks about the paths. There's two paths. Everybody, it comes down to two paths. You're either on one path, that's the path that leads to life, or the path that leads to destruction. I'm always reminded of Proverbs where it says there's a way that seems right to a man or woman, but in the end, it leads to destruction, to ruin, if it's not Christ. So Jesus is saying there, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name. We casted out demons in your name. We performed many miracles in your name. But I will reply, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's laws. Not everyone who says they're a Christian are a Christian, is what Jesus was saying there. You're going to know them by their fruits. And fruits is a big topic here in these verses, especially between verses 2 and 8. 6 times Jesus uses that term here. He's interested in fruit. God is interested in fruit. Like I told you, the branch only serves one purpose, and that is to bear fruit. It's good for nothing else. It's not even good for lighting fires. And it tells us in the scriptures that we were created to glorify him, to bring glory to him, to be testimonies, to be ambassadors where people look at us, people who are in this. I keep thinking, it's so sad to be in this world without Jesus, without his Spirit living in you. How sad it must be. Maybe you're listening to me on radio or online. You're overwhelmed in your grief. It's overwhelmed you. This life would overwhelm me if I did not know the source, if I did not know the Creator. Jesus was letting us know he's the Creator here. But he's interested in fruit. Look at verse 8. He says, by this my Father is glorified, that you bear much